Alright guys, if you need a unit exam unlocked, text me and let me know. However, I think they're all unlocked. Remember that if you're doing it in calendar view, then you may not see anything due, right? Because if I remove the due date, it's not going to show up in your calendar view. So click over to the the list view and then go and find the exam, the test. If you see it listed over in contents, Mind tab, it's due. Even if I don't put a due date there, it's due. So I do try to put due dates on the Mind Tap exam so that when you go into it, it'll say it was due this week or something like that. But then after people have missed it or I want you to go back in and correct it, whatever, I wind up taking the due dates off. So go ahead and look at them. I've made the Unit 6 one part of the, the content Mind Tap folder, so you can go and take it as well, which is a good idea because we are halfway done with Unit 6 according to the PowerPoint, but we're 80% of the way done, really, because we've talked about stuff like parallel arrays and things like that. Okay, when grading, I must reiterate this. I have said it before, but if your program won't run, you don't get credit. Now, I'm not talking about a program misbehaving because, of a logic error or something like that. It adds up 3 numbers and instead it always prints 100 rather than the correct answer, right? You can get partial credit for that. But if I try to run it and it just flat out doesn't work, same kind of stuff when I wander around in here, then no credit for it. If it runs 3/4 of the way through and then generates that and there was no way to avoid it, I understand if you didn't test it adequately, like if, the one that said, up, and then it started counting up perfectly, but if you typed in down, it crashed. Yeah, you were sloppy, right? But I'll give you some credit for it. But if it doesn't, if there was no way to avoid the error, if there was just flat no way for the code to ever have worked, then you're not going to get much credit for it. Revise it and re-upload it, right? I'm not sure if I'm the only professor who lets you do that on your programs, but take advantage of it. Also, take advantage of texting me. I only get a couple of texts from this class. Now, y'all are actually doing great compared, to some of my classes. So some of the stuff that I'm saying doesn't apply so much to y'all. But I've gotten recently a lot of assignments that don't run, or they run halfway there and then they blow up, with a crash. And it's because of obvious syntax errors. So I'm sure you noticed them and then you submitted them anyways. So if that's the case, if you get stuck on something, snap a picture. I'm up until 2, a.m. every evening. I'm totally bored. I don't have anything to do. I'm kidding. But take advantage of that. All right? If your program runs part way and then crashes due to syntax errors, you might get partial credit, but you might not get any. Because I know it didn't work for you, but you turned it in. Now, it's true that it's better to turn in something than absolutely nothing, but when I'm as easy to reach as taking a picture of your screen and I can respond to you, really fast and tell you how to correct the error, then take advantage of that. Always do turn in something, even if it's not going to compile, right? Because then you're going to get a message from me saying to fix it and resubmit it. But I'm going to be a lot happier if you turn in something that works. You'll be a lot happier if you turn in something that works. Take a picture, text it to me. I hope everybody has my text number. It's been mentioned before, 898-7767. I think that covers all the comments I had recently. Alrighty, so we've been talking about looping, and we've been talking about arrays. They go hand in hand. Why? Because an array, has a series of elements that you access by that number, right? That subscript. and you use a loop in order to increment that number. So if you have an array that looks like this, A is equal to, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9. And those were all supposed to be commas. That's pretty lame. Alrighty, I give myself a 0 on this assignment. Here we go. And you want to print them out. A couple of ways of doing that. For, I like using I for my iterator, but the variable name is not important. You could call it Tony. For I in range, up to the length of the array, like that. That'll do it. What that'll really do is count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the array is 7 items long. So why do we only want it to count as 6? Because if we space it out right, that's a 0, that's index 1, index 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you count out from 0 to the length minus 1. That doesn't mean you modify your range statement to put a minus 1. The range statement takes care of that automatically. Why? Because if you do this for I in range 10, it's going to count from 0 to 9. That's just the way they made the range statement works. It looks a little weird. If you leave off the first number, it starts at 10. Excuse me, it starts at 0. That also counts from 0 to 9. If you don't want it to start from 0, you better not leave it off, right? You want to count from 1 to 9, you'd put a 1 there. But these do the same thing. If you leave off the third number, for I in range, 0, 10, 1, that's the same thing. If you leave off the third number, the step number, it assumes 1 by default. But if you wanted to count by 2s or hundreds or something like that, you better put a number there. If you're going to put that number in, you can't leave that one off, right? Because it wouldn't know the difference. It wouldn't know the positioning. If you feel like doing the whole thing each and every time, that's totally cool. So if I was going to rewrite this for loop, it'd be good syntax. Get rid of that. Then I could start off as 0. I would go up to but not including the length. And I would go by 1s every time. That's the same as doing range length of A. That's shorter, but if this way makes more sense in your brain, totally go for it. Now that you have a subscript counter, you can print out the item. You can add it. You can do something. Do something with a subscript I. Print it out. Add it to your total. Whatever you needed to do with it. You have your element there. There's a shorter syntax. We could call this the for I in range loop. Technically it's just a for loop, but for I in range. But there's also the for each loop. For each value in list, or for each value in the array. So this is a for I in range loop. You can see why I call it that, right? For each value in the list, you don't have a subscript number. Instead, it looks like this. For value in array, do something with V. Much shorter syntax, right? I'll put my print statement, print V total plus equals V, right? But still, you get the idea. Much cleaner syntax. This is something that Python gives you that the book's not going to show you. But a lot of other languages support this same syntax. C#, C++, Java, all sorts of them do. Because if they give you, once you have that list, then it's nice if the language gives you a way to step through it, right? Without doing all this rigmarole. So on an exam, I may ask you, print out the array using a loop. Do either one if that's the case. I could get very specific and say I want you to use, a range-based loop, but in all likelihood I'm not gonna, because in the real world you would pick the tool that's most efficient. The only consideration here, and it's cold in here again, great. The only consideration is that you have to do the range-based loop if you're going to be changing the values in the array, because this is just a copy of each value in the array. You can change it, but big deal, it doesn't change the array. This one, you could change it, right? If you wanted to subtract 1 from every value in the array, you could do that. A subscript I minus equals 1. That would work. Subtract 1 from every value in the array. That works. It actually changes them. Instead of being 8, 6, 7, 5, it'd be 7, 5, 6, 4, whatever. You know. But you can't do that here, because if you subtract 1 from V here, big deal. It's not the array. It's not the index. It's like you're changing a photocopy of it, right? You know, I came and I took a picture of each one of you, and then I drew a mustache on the pictures. It's not going to change you, right? Photocopy. The picture isn't you. This actually is you. If I say, okay, I'm going to go to the person in the second row, you know, and draw a mustache on you, I would use that, you know, number. I would walk up to you and actually change it, and you would hit me. So I'm not going to do that. Let's go on from there. I wanted to review a little bit the syntax of for loops and how you access arrays with them. Now this is a bit much to do all this, that, right, and that didn't even work. I think I'm going to leave the others, right, because they show doing something with the element. But I'm going to put a comment out because otherwise there'd be a syntax there. So what I want you to do at this point is I'm going to ask you to do something rather than me doing it. It's going to be the kind, I mean, it's the same kind of thing that we do in our homework. But if I do this, C standing for colors, let's use L for list, right? And then I put a couple names in it. You know, Fred, Barney, Wilma, whatever. Write a loop that will print those values out. And I really want you to do a for loop. Excuse me, of course it's going to be a for loop. But use a for I in range loop, and then do the same thing with a for each value in list loop. Remember the terms list and array in this class are interchangeable. Why do I say look? And if you don't get it, that's okay. You know, I'll give you a minute to do it. I could even bring up the notes, you know, make it easy on you. There's some notes there. That just gives the game away right there. See if you can do it without looking at the notes. I'm going to use a for I in range loop here. So for I in range, I could spell out the whole thing starting with the 0 and then going out to the length of the array, which I called L rather than A. So if you typed in A, that wasn't the goal. And this is just the same as saying range length of L. Why? Because if you leave off the first number, it assumes 0, and if you leave off the last number, it assumes 1. And now that we have our subscript, that's our subscript. If you did this, it's going to print out the list each time. You're going to get 3 copies of the list. But you want that specific element in the list, so you use the subscript, like that. And before I go on, I better check to make sure that I actually got it right. All right, so the first one worked. Now the second one. This is going to be a for each value. Again, the word each doesn't apply. But for V for value, some people like E for element. In range, nope, it's not a range based. We're using for each. So for every value in L, for V and L, print V, like that. Alrighty. We need more time. We got syntax errors that my eyeballs would help with. So what if we have two lists, a parallel list, which is two or more lists of the same length, where the elements are united, joined, conceptually linked by the index number. Right, so we could make a list called first name, and it's equal to Fred, Barney, and Wilma. And, you know, if y'all have never watched the Flintstones, these names aren't going to make any sense. Last name is equal to, okay, Fred's last name is Flintstone. You don't have to space them out like I did. Barney's last name is Rubble. Where'd I come up with William? Wilma. Alright, although then we have two last names that are the same, but whatever. And then Wilma Flintstone. You can make up your own names, of course. And we might want to print out that list of first names and last names. Now I can't use a for value in list in this case. Why? Because they are linked by their index number. If I don't have an index number, then I'm out of luck. So it's got to be this syntax. For I in range, and I can use either array, right? Because they're the same length. Otherwise, they're not parallel arrays. So I'm just choosing first name. Print the first name, subscript I, and then the last name, subscript I. Hopefully when I read it, it'll say Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble, and did I say read it? Hopefully when I run it, it'll print out our names. It does not. List object cannot be interpreted as an integer. I'm not spotting the error. I'm going to highlight that line here, and y'all are going to help me. What did I do wrong there? Oh. What's the difference between what I did here and what I did here? Yeah, I need the length of it. Also, I could start it at 0, but I need the length of it, right? Just doing the list itself is trying to do the for value in. I apologize for that mistake. I'm going to take away the 0 comma because I think it makes it look prettier. Now maybe it works. I meant to make that error. No, I'm kidding. Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble, and Wilma Flintstone. Alrighty, anybody need more typing time? Waggle your hands. Here's another example of parallel arrays. Like the hours worked. You know, you have a 7-day-a-week but you know you're only going to work 5 days or something like that. Let's create an array called days. And I don't know when you want to say your week starts. I'm going to say Monday. Monday. I'm going to abbreviate it, right? Save time. MON, end quote, comma. TUE, end quote, comma. WED for Wednesday. THU for Thursday. FRI for Friday, SAT for Saturday, and SUN for Sunday. Now we're going to make an array. It's got to be 7 elements long, right? Because the day's 7. And if they were a different length, then we wouldn't be able to hook them up by their index values, by their subscripts. So hours worked. All right, I worked 8 hours on Monday, 4 hours on Tuesday, 10 hours on Wednesday. I took Thursday off. Friday I worked another 10. Saturday I took off. Sunday I took off for whatever reason. All right, now let's print them out. It's going to be another range-based loop. And I'm not going to make the mistake of not putting the LE in. Why range-based? Because as I said up here, if you don't have an index value, you can't access both arrays at the same time. So, for I in range, the length, and it doesn't matter which one as long as they're the same length. Print the day at that element, so day subscript I, followed by hours subscript I. And I goofed. What did I do wrong? Right, because that's plural and this needed an S as well. Funny how I got it right there. Alrighty, and there's my work week. So let's assume that I'm earning $10 an hour and print out how much I earned each day. So the rate is equal to 10.00, right? Hourly rate. It's just going to be another for range for loop. For I in range, the length of the days, oh come on, learn to type, days. I'm going to print the day, so days subscript I, and then I want to print what they earned. How about I do that calculation separately? I could put it right here, but okay. So before that print statement, I'm going to do pay is equal to hours subscript I times the rate. So when I print it out, it's just going to say print days subscript I, comma, pay. Now this isn't going to be formatted real nicely with the $sign and stuff like that. We could put some more text in here to make it look better. Something like this. I'm going to wind up commenting out that prior line. On, comma, days subscript I, you earned, end quote, comma, wait, let's put a $sign in there. End quote I, or what? $, end quote, comma, followed by their pay. Now I'm going to comment out that one because I don't need to print it out twice. Just formatting it a little bit better. Yeah, I made a big mistake. It's not for in range. I need a variable there, right, in front of the word in. Apologize for that. So for I in range. I just use I all the time if it's going to be an index counter, rather than type out the word index, right? Alrighty, so on Monday I earned $80, on Tuesday I earned $40, on Wednesday I earned $100, and so on. So that's what you use parallel arrays for, keeping track of data that you need to tie together somehow. Now, did we have to initialize our array with that? No, we could write a loop that would ask you, how many hours did you work on Monday? How many hours did you work on Tuesday? How many hours did you work on Wednesday? And so on. I kind of want to do that, even though we've typed quite a bit already. So we have an array of days. Declarations. Days is equal to, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. I'm not going to do the whole thing, etc., etc. And yeah, I should have put one of these up at the top. And then we allocated our other array, right? I forget what I made all this uppercase or lowercase. Hours is equal to, and I want an array of 7. Why? Because we have 7 weeks. Excuse me, 7 days in a week. So it's going to be 7 times subscript, or not subscript in this case, the value of 0. That just happens to allocate. This is how you do it in this language. There are plenty of others. So I'm going to put a comment here saying what I'm doing. And then we're going to actually encode all this. So create an array of 7 ints. All right, now I need a for loop. So I can iterate through this array, asking how much they earned on Monday, how much they earned on Tuesday, how much they earned on Wednesday, and then having an input statement. Alrighty. I'm going to show you all a cheaty way of speeding things up. Do you notice I didn't have any lines? Then I just drew a line all the way down. I can then right-click on that line and do arrange, send to back. And then boom, right? Kind of looks good. Good enough. Alrighty. Now my decision is actually a for loop. For I in range, I could hard code the number 7 right, just assuming I know how many days there are. But I'm going to go ahead and do the length of the days array. I'm being a little too much Python specific in my syntax here. If this is supposed to be like pseudocode, I shouldn't be like that. But alrighty. Now for every one of those, I need to input the hours. Input hours for that day. And then I need to assign that into my array, right? Hours is equal to hours that they typed in. And I wish it had hooked up the line to the top. And then it's going to loop. Then I'm going to need a for loop to print out, right? The number of hours, the day of the week and the hours. That input statement is kind of vague. It doesn't show how we're going to print the question. So maybe I'll clarify that, or maybe I'll just leave it alone. But I'm going to make the syntax a little bit better. Input the hours for day subscript I, right? Because we're going to print out Monday, we're going to print out Tuesday, we're going to print out Wednesday, that kind of thing. So now we're just leaving it a little more vague, or a little less vague. And then we would go down here and we would print out the array. Print out print days and hours with a loop. Am I cheating by doing that? Totally. That's kind of temporary. And really, I should write the loop, you know, with the diamond and stuff like that, but we've already written several loops that print stuff out. So is that the real point of the assignment? No, this stuff is the real point of the assignment right here. Let's do that. We're going to go back into our code and tell you what, just copy those. Tell you what, copy all of these lines, right? We're going to pretend we're starting a new program. Copy that days, hours, and then that for I in range. I like copying and pasting when I can get away with it. But I'm going to describe what we're doing here. Write a program that will ask how many hours I worked each day, and then print a table showing days and hours. That's what I want this code to do. So this print statement is not quite right? Because for one thing, I don't have an hours yet. I'm going to be asking for the hours. And another is that we said we wanted this to be an array of 7 length. The cheaty way would just be to replace all those with zeros, right? That's the cheaty way. But what if I asked you to do 365 days a year? Would you want to type in 365 zeros? No, you would not. Instead, and I'm going to put that as a comment, here's what you would really do. I need this to be 7 elements containing zeros. That's how I allocate an array filled with 7 zeros in Python. So if I ran it now, it's going to print out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but it's going to print out zeros all the way down. I'm going to do that just to make sure I don't have a syntax error already, right? Because we haven't asked the user. Okay, so I'm going to push this down because this is good code here, but I'm going to need a different for loop for doing the input. Here's what I'm doing now. I'm doing this part. The for I in range, the input statement. It's going to be kind of similar. I could just copy that line, but I'm going to type it in again. Input hours for each day. That's what I'm doing. For I in range, the length, and again, it doesn't matter which array because hopefully they're the same length of days. Now you see what I mean? I could have just copied and pasted that, but here's where it gets a little bit different. Because I'm going to ask the user. So I need a print statement and then I need an input statement. So print how many hours worked for, and now I want to print out the day, right? I want to print out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. What am I going to put there in order to print out the day? How have we done it every other time? Yeah, it's going to be days, subscript I. And heck, I could end it in a question mark just to make it really look like a nice question. Now we need an input statement. And then we have to convert it to a number. Our usual business. Hours, and I'm making this lowercase. If you have already made your hours array lowercase, you're going to need to pick a different variable. Could just be 8, right, for hours. That's kind of vague. HRS is equal to input. Then I need to convert it to a float, just like every other time we input a number. But by the way, some of the errors that I saw when I was grading the homework is people converting input to a float every single time, even if it wasn't a number, right? The word up is not a number, so you would not do that conversion. You would not do a float of what they typed in if they typed in the word up or down. Okay, so, and then we have to convert it to a number. Hours is equal to float hours. And now we can put that into the array. Hours at this position, hours subscript I, is equal to the hours they just input. Now this is going to get kind of tedious just because every time we run the program, right, it's going to ask for 7 values. So, you know, we may comment this code out or something. But let's run it and make sure it works. All right, so how many hours worked on Monday? I worked 8 hours on Monday. It's not letting me type. Oh, I need to go to the next line, I guess. 8 hours on Monday, 6 hours on Tuesday, 10 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours on Thursday, nothing on Friday, nothing on Saturday, but my boss called me in on Sunday and I had to work 6 hours. And there's my little table. I could also print out, right, you know, a pay rate table again, you know, multiply each one by the rate and print out the total. And if I was really cool, then I could be adding all those up and find out how much I earned that week. That's worth doing. So we're going to have one more for loop that's going to total all those guys. Nah, we're going to totally cheat and use a Python command called sum, which actually does that for loop for you. Okay, so total underscore hours is equal to sum of the hours array. And then I could do print total hours worked equals end quote comma total underscore hours. So test it out. Make sure you don't have a syntax error. I guess I should test it out as well. Come on. Where's my little gripper? There we go. All right, so I worked 38 hours. I could calculate the average, right? The average is going to be equal to the total hours divided by the number of elements in the array. Let's do that as well, and then we'll call this little experiment here done. I didn't stop the recorder, did I? No. All right. So, the average is equal to the sum of the hours list divided by the length of the hours list, right? If the sum of the hours list is 40 and the length of the hours list is 7, then the average is going to be 40 divided by 7. And maybe you were taught the word mean rather than average, right? So you could say mean is equal to sum hours. So let's print that out. Print average hours per day, end quote, comma, average. All right. I better test it. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. 49 hours. Hope I get overtime. Average hours per day, 7. Alrighty, gang. I want to make sure it's working for everybody. I hope you have the concept of parallel arrays. We've kind of drilled in on it a lot, but that's because it's an incredibly important concept. In fact, arrays are an incredibly important concept in general. So if I ran this, and it showed too many decimal points, as is likely when you calculate the average, right? 5, 6, 7. Oh, yeah. What did I do wrong? How many hours for Monday? 5, 6, 7, 4, 1, 1.7, 2.5, whatever. Okay, I just happened to pick some numbers, right, that round out nicely. What if I worked, how am I going to get something that looks really lousy? Something divided by 7. Okay, forget it. I'm going to fake it. A is equal to 1 divided by 7. Right, that's going to be lousy. So if I printed A out, you don't even have to type that in because I just want to demonstrate it. Right? Oh, for Pete's sake, I'm going to have to do this every single time. Okay, that's really nasty, right? When you print it out, you might want to limit the number of hours. You have to use a special syntax in order to get, it's called a formatted print statement. So I'm going to replace this print average hours per day with a formatted print statement. In some languages, it's actually a different word. In this one, it's not. But, so I'm going to comment that out. Type this in again. But I'm not going to use a comma there. And there's something I need to do before the end of the string. So I'm going to use a percent sign. And how many decimal places do I want? You know, normally you don't care more about 2 decimal places, right? So %.2f. What this means is, oh, by the way, I'm going to put a special placeholder here that's going to be filled in by the value of this variable. But I want it to be a floating point number, but I only want 2 decimal places. What if I didn't want any decimal places? I wanted it rounded, right? I would put 0. What if I wanted 5 decimal places? I would put %.5f. But 2 sounds good to me. And then I can't use a comma there because it's a formatted print statement. I have to do a percent sign. Now, am I going to ask that on an exam? No. But you probably want to remember that if you want to print out something, but you want to limit the number of decimal places, you would use a formatted print statement. And if you remember those words, then you could probably Google up how to do it. %.2f. The %.2f will force it to print only 2 decimal places. All right. And since I'm getting really tired of typing in this data, it'll probably be the last change I make to this piece of code. Six, 7, 8, 12.3, 6.3, or right. I'm trying to force it to have weird values. All right. And who knows what it really would have printed if I hadn't have done the %.2f, but that forced it to print only 2 decimal places. I can also use that percent business in order to make them line up nicely. What do I mean by that? Well, if you print a table out, you want it to be all nicely lined up, right? In columns rather than being ragged. Right now, all of our arrays are ragged. They happen to look pretty good just because we made every day equal to 3. I think I'm going to skip talking about that. Or will I? All right. right, we're going to do one more for loop. Dadgummit. Alrighty, so for I in range, parentheses, to the length, parentheses. Oh, and I got the question, when do you use the square braces and when do you use the parentheses? Use parentheses everywhere unless you're addressing an array. Then use square braces. Alrighty. So, this isn't going to look any good. Why am I bothering doing this? What I need in order for this to look good is data of widely varying lengths, right, that I wanted to arrange in commas. And right now we don't really have any data of wildly varying lengths except for this array, this parallel array up here. I'm going to skip this one. Go ahead and delete that last one until we come up with a better use for it. Just tuck away in your head, again, that if you're printing stuff out, but you want them lined up in commas, again, you're going to use formatted print statements. Alrighty. Even though we haven't looked at the PowerPoint once, this covers the rest of the chapter pretty much. So, use parallel arrays when you have two or more arrays that contain related data, related by their subscript. I love this line. Parallel arrays are very useful. It's very true. All right. Doing a linear search. Did we do a linear search? That's where you go item by item looking for the value. Did I do the thing where I wander down the center aisle asking people's age or pretending to? Yeah, so linear search is when you just start at element 0 and you keep looking for it until you find it. What they're saying is that you should leave the loop as soon as a match is found, right? Because if your array is 20,000 elements long and you find it on element 3, you don't want to continue searching them. So, if you have an array named A and you want to search it for value V. That's why we either put that break statement in or we make our if look a little bit more complicated. Something like this. Found at is equal to -1. We never found it. And then while, nope, not while. Yeah. Got to initialize our counter. I is equal to 0. And then while I is less than the length of our array and found at still equals -1. Why am I using -1? Because supposedly it's an invalid value in every language other than Python where it means the last element. So I'm just using it as the end of my value marker, into my array marker. Okay, so if the array at element I is equal to our search value, woohoo, we found it. Found at is equal to I. And this breaks the array early. Excuse me, breaks the loop early because as soon as found at changes from our default value of -1 to an actual position, we have found it. And then do something with array at position found at. That's a linear search. Start at 0, go to the end of the array, but if you find it, exit early. Two ways of exiting early. One is you can write your while statement, clever like that. The other is you can just use a break statement. If I used a break statement, I wouldn't need this part. If I have this part, I don't need the break statement. What does the break statement do? It just causes it to exit the while loop. Searching an array for a range match. Range match. What if you have some kind of discount based on the number of items ordered, right? If they order from 0 to 8, they don't get any discount. But if they order 9 to 12 items, they get a 10%. If they order 13 to 25, they get a 15%. If they order 26 or more, they get a 20%. I'm not going to show you the code because it took me, several mistakes of recreating it the last time. But what you do is you declare an array, and by the way, this is in kind of in pseudocode terms, and it also looks a lot like C++ and Java. But what they're saying is I'm going to list all my discounts in one array, and then the limits in another array. So again, these are parallel arrays. They're of the same length, and they have, content that is related by their index number. And then they wrote a loop. They started from the end. If the value that you ordered is greater than that, then you get that discount and break out of the loop, right? So if the number that you ordered is greater than 26, your discount is 0.20 and then break. If it wasn't, it goes to the next item. Notice that we're counting from the end to the beginning. We didn't start from 0 and going up to 3. We'd have to start at 3, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, and then go backwards. Okay, so then it goes back here. It wasn't that limit. All right, is the number of items greater than or equal to 13? Yeah, it was, but it was not greater than 26. That means it's between those two, and so our discount is 15 and it fails. About time to create our Dropbox. Summaries. Remaining within array bounds. Very important to make sure you don't go past the end of the array. That's why we keep using len, right? If our array is 100 elements long, you can only go from 0 to 99. If your array is 5 elements long, you can only go from 0 to 4. Let's count them out. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if our index goes past 4, it blows up. So arrays are composed of elements of the same type, all ints, all strings, all whatever. And so elements of the same data type occupy the same number of bytes in memory. Meaning that if you have 4 ints and each int takes up 4 bytes, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 bytes in memory. When you're reading from memory, if you read past the end of your allocated space, like if you say, okay, I want the 3rd int, it'll go, okay, and it'll get those 4. But if you say I want the 5th int, it'll go, and then there's no memory left to read from, and it'll probably crash your program or at least give you invalid data. Let's make our Dropbox.